Using a 13mm socket, we're going to go ahead and remove this bolt here and this bolt here. Using a pry bar, I'm going to go ahead and remove this caliper itself. Now I want to go ahead and use a tool to go ahead and support the brake unit itself. Put this up out of the way. Using a 21mm socket, remove this bolt and this bolt here. With those two bolts removed, go ahead and remove the caliper bracket. Using a number 6 Allen key, we're going to go ahead and remove these two slider bolts here. Once that's off, go ahead and repeat for the other side. I'll go ahead and separate these units here. I'm going to go ahead and slide these pins out of the boot. If you want, you could use a bolt to go ahead and push that out the other way. Do the same over here. With our slided pins out, we're just going to apply a little bit of grease on the outside and then put some inside the boot. Put it right inside, work it around, and repeat for the other side. Once you have everything greased up, go ahead and work the pins back into the boot, and we're just going to push these on through. And then go ahead and work the sliders back and forth, get that grease moving around. Do the same for the other side. Go ahead and remove this bolt here. When you remove this here, you want to make sure you have 2 copper washers. One will go on that side, then the brake line will go in the middle, and then this will go on, and then we'll reinstall. What I'm going to do first is remove these 2 caliper bolts. I'm going to use a 13mm. So what we're going to do now is we're going to use an extra washer or nut that we had laying around the garage. And what we're doing here is this is actually going to keep this rotor from flopping around. Now if your vehicle has lug nuts that has a through hole in the front, this will work out better for you. In our case here, we just use something to take up the extra space here. And just by hand, that locks the rotor in place. We're now going to use an 11mm socket to go ahead and remove the brake line from the caliper itself. Now there will be brake fluid that runs out of this here. Have a catch can or some rags underneath ready to go. We'll pull that bolt out. When you pull the line off, you want to inspect both sides, but there is a copper washer right here. The other one came off on the bolt, so we know that we're clear. Next, take your new bolt with the copper washer, put it through the top. Grab your second new washer, put it on the back side. Grab your new caliper, line this up, and get the bolt started. I'm going to go ahead and snug that down. Now that you have that tight, go ahead and wipe it down. I'm just going to set this aside. Set it in a position that will hold that caliper. You don't want this to fall. You can use a caliper hook and hang it up out of the way. I'm just going to throw the brake line bolt back in here for now. Now we're going to go ahead and pull our caliper off of the brake system here. Now this will have residual fluid in it, so you want to be careful where you put it. I'll set it right into our drain pan. Go ahead and remove your brake pads. Using a 21mm socket, you want to go ahead and remove this bolt and this bolt here. Be careful when you remove this bolt, the caliper bracket will drop. We'll go ahead and line up our bracket using some blue Loctite on those threads. Go ahead and get the bolt started. With the bolt started, we'll now go ahead and snug those down. I'm going to torque these bolts to 130 foot-pounds. We'll go ahead and install our brake pads next. With the brake pads installed, we'll now grab our brake caliper, slide that over, and align up the lower tab into the spring here. Pop the top into the upper spring. I'm going to grab the bolts and get these started. Once you get the upper one started, we're going to go ahead and repeat for the bottom bolt. I'm going to go ahead and tighten up these upper bolts. Now we're going to torque our caliper slide pin bolts to 24 foot-pounds. Now what we want to do is pop off the little rubber boot on the bleeder screw, grab a 10mm wrench, and we're going to go ahead and open up the bleeder. What we're going to do is start with a gravity bleed, let the fluid come through, fill up the piston area, and then start to come out here. Once this comes out, we'll go ahead and close that up. We'll then get in the vehicle, pump up the brakes, and then open the hood and top off our brake fluid as necessary. We're now going to torque the brake line bolt to 12.8 foot-pounds. Now our brake fluid is below our max line. It's not down to the low line here, but we do want to go ahead and open this up and top off the level of the fluid using the recommended fluid through the manufacturer. And go ahead and install our cap. So now we have a steady stream of brake fluid coming out. I'm going to go ahead and tighten that down. We do want to go ahead and clean this up and get rid of any residual brake fluid that might have dribbled off the bottom. Once we have fluid coming out of the caliper, you want to come on into the vehicle. Go ahead and pump up the brakes. And once that pedal is nice and firm, let's go ahead and check that fluid level. Now you can go ahead and take your rubber boot, pop that back on. Now I'm going to go ahead and install the wheel. And get all the lug nuts started by hand. Then we're going to go ahead and snug up the lug nuts. I'm going to go ahead and torque down the lug nuts to 135 foot-pounds.